Yes, well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here this morning. It is 9:01, which means it's time for us to get started. Thanks everyone very much for joining us. We know it's for those of you who, which I'm guessing is most, who are from Minnesota. It's been a rough couple of days here, and so we appreciate everyone logging in here this morning, even though there's other things that other issues around the state that are on our mind, and so we appreciate that very much. This morning we're going to have a conversation with Justin Dahlheimer, and who's with First National Bank, and DeeDee LeMier, who's our newest, latest, and greatest educator here in Extension. And we're going to talk about a conversation about how Justin with First National Bank of Osakis is supporting businesses in its region. First National Bank is the only bank located in a small tourist-oriented town with a business community dominated by locally owned enterprises. And Justin is the fifth generation of the family which organized the First National Bank of Osakis in 1903, and he took over as president and CEO in 2016. He grew up in Osakis and graduated from Osakis Public High School in 2002, and received his degree in economics and history from Hamlin in St. Paul in 2006. In addition to that, he has a master's in urban and regional planning from the University of Minnesota Humphrey School, which he received in 2010, and had a focus on community and economic development. And Justin and DeeDee are going to have a conversation this morning. They're gonna chat for about 20 minutes, and then we're gonna open it up for the last 10 minutes for questions that you might have for both of them. As Michael Darger just said earlier, we'll have an evaluation with a link that's sent out towards the end. So if you're able to fill that out, we certainly do appreciate it. It kind of helps us know how we're doing, and think about some ways that we might improve. So your participation in that is appreciated. With that, I think I'm going to pass it over to DeeDee.
Thank you so much, John. I really appreciate your kind of setting the stage for our time together today. It is my distinct pleasure to get to welcome Justin to have a conversation and talk a little bit more about the great work that he's been doing in his community, and really thinking about how he's responding to the immediate crisis around COVID-19, and also thinking about that bigger picture community economics response to the issue. So with that, Justin, I would love to give you a chance to really tell us a little bit about Osakis, and sort of what path you saw the community being on as far as community economics and development before the pandemic, the types of industries that are there, and just kind of give us the lay of the land of what you were working with before all of this happened.
So yeah, we're about 2 hours northwest on I-94 from the Twin Cities area. Really kind of a gateway to the lakes, the chain of lakes area near Alexandria, Minnesota. So, in 2010, most of these communities that are small were struggling, just rebounding from the last recession with a lot of disinvestment. There wasn't a lot of resources at the table to do a lot of infrastructure improvements and that sort of thing. And I just finished up at the Humphrey School, and really the timing was perfect for me with a job available at my family-run bank to come back. And when I got back into Osakis, I just kind of realized that the community that I grew up in wasn't as vibrant as what I remembered it to be. So, it spent probably 3 to 4 years really just getting to know people, re-emerging into the community into different fashions, joining boards, becoming involved in whatever way possible. I was even on the fire department for about 6 years. So getting to know the people that I probably knew fairly well, but you have to get to know again, just because you're merging into a different role. So through that time period, really the community started to turn more to understanding how tourism impacted its local budgets, its local economy, and what a community our size needs to do in order to promote that and be welcome to it, and really balance the dynamics of what our locals really love about their community with the sheer fact that there's a lot of others in this state and other states that want to come visit, and we need to be a unique place for that. So that really started to bear fruit. It took many years. I mean, we had to improve the way our downtown looked. We had to focus on our business owners and providing them the resources and the knowledge. We had to find people who cared about our community to join boards and be leaders and really lead from the front and by example. And I think, leading up here to 2019, 2020, we really had built that momentum. And I felt that opening up this year for a tourist season was going to be one of our best years ever. So when COVID-19 pandemic occurred, that was a psychological blow, back in February, March, when we were all looking at what was happening and how it was manifesting overseas and what potentially it could do in a timeline here in Minnesota, specifically encouraging people to stay home rather than get outside and see our lakes and see our communities. So that put us in March of 2020, 2 months ago now, in a really precarious position with all the investments we've made and all the business owners that we've had excited about transitioning into a new business, because most of these businesses, 5 to 8 years ago were by people who are just looking for somebody to take them over. And now we had a successfully transitioned local economy that was building momentum.
Thank you. So when you sort of had that community level realization in March of, okay, there's this huge change kind of coming, what were some of those immediate challenges that you saw? And I'm thinking specifically that as a community bank, you're in a very intimate relationship with businesses and with individuals, where you're likely having different conversations than what somebody may be having in the coffee shop or at the post office in town. So what were those immediate challenges that you were hearing in your role in the community? I
think the main concern was unknown. I mean, everybody goes to speculation when they start thinking about the unknown. And as a leader of a bank and a financial institution, as well as another loan officer, and dealing and managing other loan officers that deal with these businesses, these people directly, we needed to let our customers know and people within our community know that while this is unknown, we can band together, we can step through it, and we're nimble enough to be creative and address the issues as they come up. And I think that meant a lot of phone calls from my lenders, from my customer service staff, and myself. It meant a lot of communicating into key areas of the community, what we were doing, that there was a calm at the bank. There was a presence there. There wasn't going to be anything that looked like panic running between our walls. And if we did that well, it would permeate outward because of our strong relationships with everybody in our community. And that's what we spent our time talking about very quickly in March, was what can we do, knowing that there's going to be a period of time here where these business owners are going to be stranded, to let them know that they don't have to worry. They can reach out to us and we will give them all the support possible. And hopefully we can get through this time period and come out closer, in a more trusting relationship than, worrying about what's going to happen and in specifics to their own financial situations. So that initial thing we talked about was the psychological effects of this. And, that's where we talked about a gift card purchasing program because our bank has a budget for donations and we really want to see our impact be right in front of us and benefit our customers. We sat and talked it through, and I credit my staff. They know the businesses very well, And we just said, what can we do to give them at least some comfort in knowing we're here. You have some revenue right here, right now, and we can move through these next couple months with the options available to us by the stimulus packages that they were talking about and by the resources available to us at the bank.
Thank you. I think that's such a creative solution to thinking about how you're addressing some of that human need in that situation, as well as the financial need. So kudos to you and your team for that kind of creative response. How are you sort of envisioning? So now, you know, the bank is the proud owner of a whole bunch of gift cards. How are you kind of thinking about those very unique resources that you have in this broader community economic development plan and that longer journey that Osakis has been on?
So backing up a little bit, I spent a short period of time with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance, which has an office in Minneapolis. And really that's kind of where I got my community economics lens built out, and understanding just how shallow you can create your economy in these small communities if you focus on locally owned businesses and you rule make from a placemaking standpoint, where you're creating a place for very passionate people about your community to do business. So that the fact that we have these types of businesses in our community makes it much easier for a program like this, where we're purchasing directly gift cards to them, providing them revenue that they can use to pay their bills, to keep their businesses solvent, as well as restructure their loans to buy them time, as well as take the gift cards they've given us and move them out in special ways to promote more business for their economy. So I think the next step here is really understanding the most impact we can make with those gift cards. We just recently gave a bunch out to our school district as a thank you to our staff and faculty members for their creativity during our time of distance learning, and we gave them out to our graduates. So, you know, these are not customers of the bank for the most part. I mean, I'd say there's a mix of customers of the bank, but we're not looking at it from the standpoint of the customers and can we give them to our customers and can we do that as a benefit to our customers. It's more as, can we expose more people to our local community and see if we can very much provide them a new customer and create these patterns of commerce that tend to get sticky if people, you know, are exposed to a new place that they like. And I think the one real silver lining in the COVID crisis is that people's shopping patterns have changed. They're looking more local. They want to avoid those large, you know, gatherings. So where do you tend to end up? In small local businesses that are designed to serve and have these same products and services, but, you know, are not nearly at the scale of a large business. So I think if anything, the next phase is going to be, how do we keep those patterns strong within our community, so that way we can keep this a more permanent way of doing business, because I truly believe that's the best way of doing business in small town Minnesota.
Thank you. So I really appreciate you kind of thinking about those internal audiences within your community. And certainly that's what so much of the research around sort of what post-COVID is going to be is very locally focused. Are you seeing some shifts then with conversations around tourism as well? Is that changing? Thinking about who you might be looking at drawing into your community or some of those patterns?
From a rulemaking standpoint, you know, the Airbnb and VRBO, vacation by rental owners, movement in the last 4 to 5 years, I believe, and I've been a proponent of it within our community, that it provides a little more sustainability in your tourism economy, because you're spreading out the amount of owners lakeshore property and places you can visit, and making it a lot of these owners this is supplemental income. This is a secondary home. This is something that can really survive shocks to the economy, unlike our large resorts. Osakis used to have upwards of probably 14 to 20 resorts, and now we're down to probably 8. And a lot of them went to the co-op, privatization, homeowners association route. And the VRBO Airbnb has now brought that back as an option for weekly and nightly travel to our community. And I feel that's going to be still very robust during COVID-19, because those tend to be self-contained units without public facilities they're sharing, and allow people to still experience the lakes, experience vacation without, the strict guidelines that we're noticing that they still haven't really elaborated on for the campground situations or the park situations. So I definitely think, whereas some people may have cursed that VRBO Airbnb culture, and I totally can see from that perspective, if you're a resort owner, how there still needs to be some structures in place to make them pay lodging tax and be part of that community and pay into it. But it does provide our local areas some economic diversity and some sustainability of the people coming in, and also expose people in unique ways, because it's really expensive to open hotels and these more official places for tourism. But if you can organically create that and allow your economy to be a little bit more small and one-on-one, you're going to bring more people in. And I think people are searching for that because it's a unique experience and it's a little bit more self-contained and private. So, from a rulemaking standpoint, we're still really struggling with what kind of rules our community needs to adopt to regulate that industry. The VRBOs and the Airbnbs and the non-monthly rentals. It's controversial. It's taken time to get ahead of, but I definitely think we're going to come up with rules that are responsive to our local community, not some sort of model adopted model that doesn't play well.
Yes. So we have just another minute here before we'll switch over to Q&A. My last sort of thing is to really just ask what you share with people about why they should visit Osakis, why they should make it their kind of halfway stop on 94. What are your kind of favorite must-see places in the area?
Well, we've got a lot of independent local businesses that are unique. Everybody hears about our ice cream shop, Tip Top. It's always, every summer it's a headline as best ice cream in Minnesota. It's the nostalgic pull off the road diner feel where you can get ice cream and just enjoy the fact that you're on vacation. And I think people really enjoy that. I really like our lefse shop. It's unique. They make lefse, Jacob's lefse. They ship it nationwide. Heck, they might even ship it worldwide for all I know. But it's very unique to have that in our community, and them having a business that provides us something unique that people can visit, but also is a service that exposes people to Osakis from just the online ordering standpoint. In general, I just think it's a beautiful community to feel like we're not that far away from those stories our grandparents told us about living and working and seeing people who have a versatile background, who in one moment can help you with something at a hardware store, and the next moment can be offering a beer out back and talking over how to use that equipment to fix whatever it is in your house. And I think we take that for granted in our small communities, but when you do go to the metro areas or meet people who've never seen it, they look at you like you're from a different planet. And I like the planet we're from. So I will speak to the high heavens, and specifically during the situations of strife and recessions that we're dealing with, you see the resolve of small communities and people working together on a day-to-day basis that really care about this. And I preach that to people of all types of communities, that there's nothing better than knowing the people that you live with and having something in common, that we love this place and we'll work together no matter what our backgrounds or political affiliations are, to advocate for it, to protect it, and to really expand its vitality. And in some ways, there's a little bit of controversy. We don't want everybody to know about what we got out here, but I think a little bit of exposure is a good thing.
Wonderful. Jacob's Lefse is one of my all-time favorite stops personally. So there's nothing quite like having warm Lefse mid-road trip to make you feel cared for and have that small town experience. So I'm with you there. We do have a few questions here in the chat. To start with, we had a question about sort of how FNB have helped with the agriculture sector in your community. If you've had like a different approach for working with them, and I'll just turn it over to you as far as how you've been working with the ag sector.
Agriculture, I grew up on a small dairy farm, so I have a special spot in my heart for how hard those folks work on a day-to-day basis. And we work with a lot of small to medium-sized farmers. Unfortunately, program-wise, is really dictated by the USDA and the Farm Service Agency of the options available above and beyond what a bank can do. What we can do is obviously buy time and be creative and work out repayment structures that work for those farmers. I am somewhat involved in communicating with our local co-op creamery. I do provide some guidance to them should they ask questions on things that are available. But we do have that co-op model still alive and well in our community, and we're urging more than ever that our local farmers use that to lessen their costs and have the co-op be there to absorb a lot of the fluctuations and provide the time necessary to get through some of these very long recessionary periods for the farm sector. I still think there's a burgeoning group of hobby farmers, as we'll call them, that are kind of expanding into the direct to consumer agriculture, providing local meat, local vegetables, local produce, even local dairy products. And I think that's going to continue to grow because those folks really love to do that, and they see it as their passion, not their job. And they're able to gain employment elsewhere or have a spouse that works. And I think over time that will continue to be robust. It's just going to be a different type of farming. It might be in 5 to 10 years that cash cropping in small town, in the small areas of Minnesota is not going to be viable just because of the economies of scale that we provide our very, very large farmers. So they're just going to have to be creative and use those structures that worked back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s to provide different types of goods. And I think I see that dynamic starting to build. Farmers markets are becoming busier. There's more local producers, and I'm excited to see that keep expanding.
Wonderful. So another question that we had was asking if you could share your guidelines for the gift card purchasing program. I suspect it's kind of along like, how did you decide who would get, which businesses you would purchase from, that sort of thing?
Yeah, we were very focused on retail-oriented businesses that were going to be directly impacted by the shutdown order, the stay-at-home order. And so, that really came down to just basically retail shops, restaurants, and salons, places of very small ownership. We didn't directly reach out to we have a Dollar General in our community. We felt they were going to be served fine because there's going to be enough business in the area for them. But really those small specialty shops that, had retail, that was going to be severely impacted. And, some of them had a very good period of time over those 2 months and probably didn't need our gift card purchasing. Some of them were very thankful of it, but I'll reflect back on the fact that psychologically, that moment in March, none of them thought they were going to have a good period of time. And that's what we wanted to reach out to. We didn't really, care so much of estimating that this type of business is going to do better than that type of business. It was all types of businesses that fit in that bucket of going to be impacted because they can't use their business the way they intend to, or people are going to be discouraged to come out of their house and utilize things from them, or they're tourist oriented. And that tourism season is going to be delayed probably. So it wasn't a hard, fast rule. It was a lot of conversations with my staff, and we wanted to be more inclusive than less inclusive. And when we do things like this, we do know that there may be a pocket of people that feel they were missed out on, and we're just going to have to, apologize and not let that be the reason we don't do things, and see if we can serve them as well. So that's something, a tenet to keep in mind, is we tend to get scared of the people who are going to be mad about what we're doing. But we need to have the backbone to stand behind what we're doing and the intent of it. And if there are people who suffer or feel like they were left out, we should be allowed to say we're sorry and try to make that right. And I think over the last few years, we're able to lean on the trust we've built because we're not doing things that are self-serving.
Thank you. I think that leads in really well into the last question that we have posted. And it's just asking, what are some of the ideas that you're considering for what's next? Beyond this sort of gift card project, what other ways are you kind of looking at investing in the community, whether it's financially or with the human capital in Osakis?
Yeah, we're a staff filled with great ideas, and oftentimes we're talking about things we don't do many times, and we're just drawing back on them. But I think one thing that's really gaining momentum is this idea of community education, in a different mindset out in rural Minnesota. Community education as it stands as being more of a place to educate our business owners, a place to educate our younger customers that are in school about entrepreneurship and providing that flavor to our community, and making the bank maybe more of a leader in cultivating that, and taking the time to show these people that have passions that they can explore them, and they might lead to something that's very unique to Osakis. But I think we're learning that we need to provide a space for that, and we need to lead in that way, because it's very difficult for our school to take that on. They've got all kinds of things that they need to do. If we can invest some of our time and resources in the connections we've built to provide more of a place for learning about financial literacy, a place to learn about how to run a business, a place to learn about how to, learn how to do things that are as simple as even home ownership 101. They're all great things that will provide more value added to our businesses and provide the likelihood that some of our people will go somewhere and come back and take a business to the next level. So I really think that we're going to invest some time into that. There's some also, some financial aspects to growing into a space like that. A community financial institution designation is something that we may explore with our charter, and that will allow us to bring in grant money into our community. And I know that's a long-term part of this strategy, but it's really something that I think will continue to create place and space that is unique, and carry that into our strategic plan that we're doing as a community. We started our comp planning process this year. So we're just trying to really build on that momentum and tie together those connections and try to level up in terms of the institutions that we can build. I mean, the model that really found that's compelling in rural Minnesota specifically is, I don't know if you know Jonathan Davis. I believe it's Jonathan Davis. He started the New York Mills Culture Center and has done a lot of great work down in Lanesboro,
Yes.
Minnesota. And I've always been an admirer of how he has built unique institutions that have perpetuated the local community and the local flavor of the community. And, you know, he's not in those communities anymore and they're doing well. And I think that's the model that I keep coming back to in Osakis, and that, you know, it's potentially the bank's responsibility to get us to that place where we have a self-sustaining culture that has a institution that is in charge of it and incorporates people that are passionate about it. And I can tell you emphatically, I'm surrounded by people in my bank that are those people. They care about our community, and I love what we've built. So I like to keep that momentum going.
Nice. Well, thank you so much, Justin, for your time. I feel really inspired to come and visit as soon as that's possible and try out the ice cream shop and see what kinds of new things are happening in your area. I really appreciate you sharing your perspective. This is the first time that we've actually had a banker as part of our conversation, and it's definitely a unique perspective to have. With that, I want to hand it back over to John Bennett, my colleague, and we can kind of wrap things up.
Yes, thank you. I also appreciate it, Justin, and I've never made a left stop before, so I'm going to put that on my list. When I'm on 94, I've got to make a left stop, so that'll be a fun family trip. I want to make sure we honor people's time here. It is a couple minutes after 9:30, and we do promise that we have a 9:30 soft stop. We can keep chatting here for about another 10 minutes. Justin, if you're willing, and DeeDee, if you're willing to do that as well, if people do have questions. So we did have one more question from DeeDee, who's asking, how's the town doing with all the COVID stuff going on? Are people healthy, and is that having any more an unusual effect on Osakis than you might notice in other towns in Minnesota? Yeah. Or how's the overall attitude, I guess?
I think the anticipation is probably where we're at. We're a healthy community. We don't have a large amount of factories right in our community. So, you know, the places we're concerned about are, you know, definitely the schools, which are out. So there's not kids congregating there, and they haven't been obviously since March. And then our local community, our nursing home, which to my knowledge is doing well, and they have great rules in place and great procedures. And we're just basically monitoring the way everybody else is. I think the things that are on the top of our mind is reopening businesses, and as well as our own lobby. Our lobby's been restricted since April, and we're trying to move forward in a way that is honoring what we need to do to keep everybody healthy. So we're good right now. I think I went live and say there's some trepidation and understanding because, you know, we're not in Minneapolis or St. Paul, where they've seen more of the peak of this disease. We're definitely on the fringe of it and probably going to have an upward trend here, and need just to understand what our resources are available to us to be knowledgeable and do things that mean well for our community, which we do. I'm on the city council. We have many meetings about how we're handling things. And I think tourism is definitely the big unknown, is when people are moving around more, what does that look like? But I feel more confident than ever with the amount of information and the amount of experience that people are having in other communities, that we can do the things that are working, and you know, science will prevail eventually and give us the confidence that the new normal is maybe going to be more like the old normal.
Well, hey, Justin, Michael Darger here, and because this is the Retaining Businesses During the Pandemic special webinar series. By the way, I just wanted to give a shout out because we do have some non-Minnesotans here. I thought Becky was the farthest away because she's from North Carolina and she took our business retention class this spring, but DeeDee is from India, And so we have an international gathering here. And so you're talking to the world here, but most of Minnesotans. So, but the question, Justin, later on today, I'm giving a webinar in East Central Minnesota, and they're thinking about business retention and expansion. What are your thoughts with respect to, how many businesses are going to make it out of this thing? Because we just passed 100,000 Americans have died. We know that some businesses are not going to make it out of this. So any thoughts about, maximizing your business retention prospects there in Osakis?
I think if businesses were doing well going into the COVID crisis, financial institutions would behoove not to buy them the time to build that momentum. But I definitely would be worried about businesses that depended greatly on global markets, that depended greatly on different types of labor, that is going to be difficult to do the business that they, or if it's a manufacturing facility, having to completely retool in a way that keeps people healthy is going to be difficult. So I think as it pertains to rural communities, it's going to be a promising place because we've learned how important the expansion of infrastructure, specifically telecom, is out here. And we should be using this time period to really fortify those developments and increase those investments into rural communities. So I think that will bring different types of businesses out to those communities if we continue that investment and make it easy for more of these businesses to be located and have employees that are telecommunicating from rural areas. Because I know that's one thing I've noticed a lot in these last 2 months is that there's a lot of people who work for companies that are based out of big cities, but they're at their second home, or they're feeling comfortable living and working out in a place where they maybe thought they couldn't. And it's going to be very beneficial for our communities to have those types of people living and telecommuting. But in terms of business retention, I don't think retail businesses that are locally owned are going to struggle that much once the opening restrictions are lifted. And I think those owners are very passionate and dug in. But I would be very concerned if you have a lot of corporate ownership based businesses where they're making decisions that aren't based within your community. They're making decisions based on bottom lines, because I do think the bottom lines are going to look fairly poor for a period of time. So unfortunately, for some communities, that's going to be hard. For Osakis, we don't have many of those businesses. Most of our businesses are small and are locally owned, and people who are Osakis alums, for example. So they're going to be here because it's home, and they're going to do what they can and reimagine their businesses. But I do think, there's a sector of economic development where you're attracting these companies and trying to make your community more open and available to different types of branches of corporate companies. That's going to be challenging because every business is going to be impacted differently, specifically when markets start to normalize and you start to see what the new normal looks like for some of those businesses, because they might not be exactly the same.
Well, thank you, Justin. Thanks, Michael, for that question. And I appreciate everyone here who's been on the webinar here this morning. This is the Retaining Businesses During the Webinar series with Extension Center for Community Vitality. And I think I don't see any other questions here, so I think we'll wrap it up. Thanks again to DeeDee for asking great questions. And again, Justin, for sharing your story about what First National Bank is doing here in Osakis during this time. And also special hand to Michael Darg, who's been in the background doing the tech stuff here. So we can't pull off these webinars without multiple people here on deck. So with that, I'll say good day, everyone, and we hope to see you at our next webinar. And before you go, please do click on the link in the chat to the evaluation. Again, those are important to us. So thanks very much and have a good day.
And I just want to say thank you guys for having me. You guys do a great job. And I've been to some of the extension webinars, not webinars, when you guys actually did them in person. really early on in my career at Osakis. So I appreciate all the work you guys do. It really means a lot to these communities.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.